Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining. Today, I'm going to talk about the introduction to VMware Cloud Foundation. My name is Heath Johnson. I'm a senior technical marketing manager with the Cloud Platform Business Unit here at VMware. I've been with VMware for almost 5 years now and been messing around with ESX since version 2. Um, and I'm based out of Southern Wisconsin, and I've got my Twitter handler and email address on here. So if you have any questions about today's presentation, hit me up in the live Q&A. I'm here in the live Q&A, ready to answer any questions you might have. But otherwise, you can always hit me up on Twitter or send me an email, and I'll do my best to get back to you if you've got questions outside of this presentation today. With that, let's dive into a little bit about today's presentation. So I'm going to dive in and talk a little bit about what is this Cloud Foundation thing that everybody's talking about, and go kind of deep into the weeds a little bit and talk about the architecture and the building blocks that make up VMware Cloud Foundation. And then we'll go in a little further, talk about workload domains, how it gets deployed, talk about patching and lifecycle management, and then even show some of the storage options. And this is just going to scratch the surface just a little bit on what VMware Cloud Foundation is and how it can benefit your environment. So with that, let's dive right in. So let's talk about VMware Cloud Foundation and where the need for this came from, right? So for a long time, I was a customer at VMware products, and this is kind of what my IT department started to look like as far as infrastructure services goes. We started out small down here in the left-hand corner where it says ESXi5, and we had a small cluster trying out this VMware thing. We liked it so much, we decided to add more. So we added more hosts, and we added a few more ESXi5 hosts, but these were update 2, right? A new patch version came out. And then 5.1 came out. So we decided to deploy a whole nother cluster of that with another vSphere client because that was 5.1 with the new single sign-on domain. So we tried that. And over time, we had multiple projects that designed different architectures and had different needs. And before you know it, it organically grew into this giant monster of a system. We had lots of different single sign-on domains, lots of different vSphere environments. Sometimes these were spread across different geographies. And they ended up making the whole system very complex. And it got to the point where it got out of control, and we wanted an easier way to manage patching and upgrades and manage the entire system going forward. And you can kind of see I've been helping other customers as well. Here's one customer that had a similar problem. They have um, 10 different versions of vSphere installed within their data center, right? So all the way through 5 through 6 here, you can see multiple versions of vSphere. And this makes things difficult to manage, and the infrastructure can have different results. And so this was driving inconsistencies in this customer's environment, and they were just having a hard time getting patching and upgrading done. And then here's another customer just kind of showing that patching and upgrading is difficult sometimes, right? So 1,965 days of uptime on the CSXi host. That's amazing, right? Showing how stable this system is. But that's also very dangerous and scary from a security perspective. You don't know what patches are not installed on this system anymore, and it becomes a highly insecure environment. And so what we did is we have our customers kind of looking at this and going, you know what, we love the simplicity of the cloud. So we love to be able to just go to a public cloud provider and go ahead and raise your hand if you have ever tried public cloud, VMware Cloud on AWS or any of these cloud services. You simply just go to the public cloud provider online and say, I need some capacity to run my business application to a virtual machine. And it's really easy. You click a button, swipe a virtual credit card, and you get nearly instant access to public cloud infrastructure resources. It's very simple. Customers love this simplicity, but there's a few downfalls to this simplicity. And so we have these 3 major laws of what when a customer goes to that public cloud, they love the experience. They also come back on premises because of these 3 things, right? So the 3 laws that we're going to talk about here are the law of physics, right? Sometimes you need that business application close to the people that are using it. And another time, you have seen a lot of customers go, whoa, this public cloud thing is easy, but it's expensive, right? And so it costs a lot of money to manage and maintain. At the same time, sometimes the laws of the land dictate where your public cloud infrastructure can run. Things like GDPR in Europe are dictating that your customers' data cannot cross the border from where they live or locate. And so bringing these different components together of that complex infrastructure where customers um, built out their own data centers environments, and then it got out of control. And then they look towards the public cloud, but now they're coming back on premises. And what we've done here is we've developed this public or this cloud platform, VMware Cloud Foundation. It's a platform that drives this easy to use consistency and security and simplicity of a standardized cloud in your private data center. So here we can see we've got management, compute, storage, and networking all brought together by VMware Cloud Foundation. It's providing the standardized architecture, just like you would see in the public cloud. You don't get to dictate how it gets deployed or what the architecture looks like. The same is true with VMware Cloud Foundation. We're providing this full stack approach that's tested and validated by VMware engineers. And we make sure it's ready to run your applications and services in a very simplified user experience and has built-in security from the ground up. And it's ready to be used in your private data center, in your edge locations, or even in the public cloud. This provides this consistent, secure platform across all your different public cloud or private cloud needs. And so that's what VMware Cloud Foundation is this consistent, solid infrastructure ready to run inside your data center. So let's dive in a little deeper and see how this works. How do we deploy VMware Cloud Foundation? So it all starts with 4 physical hosts. We have to start with a minimum of a greenfield environment, meaning we cannot absorb or convert a current environment into a Cloud Foundation environment. We need 4 brand new hosts. We can reuse some existing hosts that you have capacity available to use and rebuild for this infrastructure. So we're going to take 4 hosts. We're going to do a bare metal install of ESX, and we can help you with that with Cloud Foundation. We have some tools to help you be able to deploy ESX on it, or you can use the scripts you already use. We have a couple technical details that need to be qualified to run Cloud Foundation on it, but they're very simple. Outside of that, we need the rack, stack, and cable ready to go with ESXi installed. And then we're going to have a couple different pieces here. We're going to deploy this Cloud Builder appliance, this orange box here. And this Cloud Builder appliance is a simple OVA appliance, and this can run either on your laptop running VMware Workstation or Fusion, or it can run on your existing infrastructure where you've got VMware running. And then the second part here is this green box. We have this Excel parameter sheet. This is literally a Microsoft Excel sheet to make it a nice GUI user interface that's easy to use, where you plug in some of the important details about how you want this Cloud Foundation deployment installed within your environment. And all we're looking for is things like, what do you want to name the vCenter? What are the username and passwords you want to use when you deploy all these different components? We're just looking for some basic information to deploy what we're calling the management domain to get this stood up on this initial deployment. From there, you give us that Excel or JSON configuration file and apply that to the Cloud Builder appliance. The Cloud Builder appliance then knows how to talk to those 4 physical ESXi hosts that have already been configured with ESXi, and it will do a fully automated deployment of the management domain. Now, this management domain just takes those first 4 hosts and configures vSAN on them, and then installs vSphere, the vCenter, the platform services controller is configured in there as well. We deploy the NSX manager controller into a cluster. We can deploy NSX edges for that north-south routing component, and then we also deploy the SDDC manager. And this is the appliance that gets deployed that helps us manage the automation of managing this private cloud infrastructure going forward. So just going through these simple processes, we get this whole management domain stood up. So with that, let's jump over to a demo so we can see this process go through. So we'll jump over to this lab environment here, and we're going to follow along. I've got these orange boxes that kind of highlight here in this lab environment to show us what we're clicking on. So within the environment here, we're going to start and open a browser, And we're going to go ahead and go through the process and see what it looks like to deploy that management domain using the Cloud Builder appliance. So we're going to launch the browser here and click on the Cloud Builder and log in to the Cloud Builder appliance that we've deployed for this environment. Again, ESXi is installed on 4 hosts to get us started. We're going to accept the end user license agreement and click Next. And then from there, we're going to say, hey, I'm going to deploy VMware Cloud Foundation. We have a slightly different process if you're going to be doing this using a VxRail platform. From there, we're going to click Next. And then we've got this wizard here we walk across where you can see this is kind of works from left to right as we go through the process. So we've got a handful of prerequisites. We need the top rack switches where these ESXi hosts are plugged in. We need them pre-configured with the proper VLANs for VMware Cloud Foundation, some DHCP and jumbo frame setup. So we're going to make sure those prerequisites are all set up. We'll hit Next. From there, we're going to download this Excel parameter spreadsheet that we talked about. And then we're going to complete the deployment on that parameter spreadsheet. So we're going to physically go fill out this parameter spreadsheet. We'll hit Next. We're going to select that parameter spreadsheet Excel file and upload that to the Cloud Builder. Again, this is just kind of deploying, helping us understand what is involved for deploying VMware Cloud Foundation inside this environment. Okay, so let's take a look and go through and take a look at this parameter spreadsheet and see what it looks like inside. So here we are, we've got this VMware Cloud Foundation Excel parameter spreadsheet open. And we're going to just start here on the first tab that's got the prerequisite checklist. So we need 4 physical hosts like we talked about. We've got ESX, we need that installed and verified, ready to go. We need the disks on these ESXi hosts ready to be able to be used with vSAN. And then we also need some DNS infrastructure pre-configured as well. From there, we're going to move on to the next tab, and this is going to show us the different components that we're going to install within the environment. So we're going to install vCenter like we talked about, the NSX components, and the SDDC Manager appliance. From there, we need some license keys. So you would enter in the different license keys for these components, and this kind of shows you a calculation of how much resources these virtual machine appliances are going to take when we deploy them on these first 4 hosts. From there, we need the passwords for all these root and administrator accounts. And you can set those all here on this tab. And then from there, you tell us, what do you want to name these different components? What VLAN do you want these to live on, right? So we're going to deploy these ESXi hosts, and we're going to name the port groups, what VLANs they run on, what subnet CIDR addresses they're going to run on, the gateways, and the MTU configuration. From there, we're going to give the information for our first 4 ESXi hosts, those IPs and everything's ready and set up there. And then we go into the last tab, the deployment parameters section here. And again, this is more naming and IP addresses of different components. So here's the name of the vCenter, what the IP of that vCenter is going to be called, what size do you want this vCenter to be when you deploy it within your infrastructure. So this meets the needs of both large enterprise customers and really small, medium businesses that might only deploy this on 4 hosts, right? From there, we configure the rest of these settings that match what you need set up for Cloud Foundation to run in your environment. So from there, we're going to select, back to the demo here, we're going to select the Excel parameter deployment sheet and open that and upload this to the Cloud Builder appliance. Okay, and from there, we've uploaded this and we're going to validate that this parameter spreadsheet is actually correct and ready for us to deploy VMware Cloud Foundation on those first 4 hosts. So we'll hit Next, and we're going to deploy the SDDC. So we're going to deploy the software-defined data center here with Cloud Foundation. Now, this process, like we talked about, is going to connect to those ESXi hosts and actually deploy vCenter and vSAN and NSX, all with automation based on the information we gave it within that Excel parameter spreadsheet. This process, because we're deploying so many different appliances, can take 2 to 3 hours, maybe less, depending upon the speed of the infrastructure that you've given it to deploy this. Through this demo, I've sped this up a little bit just so you can see what it looks like within the environment. And after a little bit here, this process is almost complete. We'll wait just a second. And you can kind of see all the different steps in the automation kind of floating by quickly that it takes to deploy all this infrastructure and get it configured correctly. All right, so now VMware Cloud Foundation is stood up initially in this greenfield environment. So we'll go ahead and click Finish, and we'll launch the SDDC Manager and see what we've deployed. So we'll log in using the credentials we gave it in that Excel parameter spreadsheet for this environment. And this is going to log us into the SDDC Manager. And here we are at the SDDC Manager dashboard page with a brand new install of Cloud Foundation. And so you can see right at the very beginning here, we've got that management domain stood up. We have 4 physical hosts deployed inside this management domain. And you can kind of see some high level information here. We can see how much CPU and memory and disk is being used and is available within the environment. We're going to click here on the management domain and go over to this management domain and take a look at the services tab here and actually launch and take a look at the vCenter that we've deployed within this management domain. And here you can see we've got, jump over to the host view. So here we've got those first 4 ESXi hosts deployed, and we've deployed all these appliances inside this management resource pool. And so this has got the NSX Edge cluster deployed and the Edge Services Gateway. This demo's got Log Insight deployed within it, and the Platform Services Controllers and the vCenter server all deployed with automation using Cloud Foundation. So that's kind of the first demo, taking a look at how we get things stood up within VMware Cloud Foundation. So let's jump back to our presentation. We can talk a little bit more about how VMware Cloud Foundation works going from there. So we've deployed now initially this management workload domain. We've got everything stood up. So we've got the 3 NSX controllers and the NSX Edge cluster deployed, and we've deployed that SDDC manager. And you can kind of see this management domain has its own vCenter. We've got all this infrastructure stood up with automation based on that Excel parameter sheet. Now, this model fits and works for a lot of our customers, right? So there's a lot of small, medium businesses. This might be all you deploy. And you can see when I had it in the demo there, we deployed all these appliances inside of a resource pool. So if you're a small or medium business, this might be all you deploy is 4 physical hosts. And then you also run your business applications on top of this infrastructure. And that's called our consolidated architecture. For our small customers, you would actually run your business applications on just these 4 hosts, and we're using resource pools to manage the resources of the physical hosts away from the business applications to ensure that everything's going to work smoothly going forward. Now, for our larger customers, you might scale this infrastructure out based upon your needs. And to scale this out, we're going to add more ESXi hosts, right? So here we've deployed some more ESXi hosts, and we have also deployed a whole nother set of NSX Manager cluster and another vCenter. And so this vCenter is going to control this workload domain. And so we call it a workload domain because it is a separate cluster, a separate piece of infrastructure. It's also deploying a completely separate vCenter. So we can isolate those business applications away from the management domain and make sure that everything in your business applications runs smoothly separately. When we're doing it for small businesses, we use the resource pools to separate those things. But as we scale up, we actually create its own vCenter and separate the infrastructure away from each other. From there, some of our larger customers can scale this out again, right? We can deploy multiple clusters within a vCenter, or we can deploy multiple workload domains. Now you can see again, we've actually deployed another workload domain and another vCenter. So every time we deploy a workload domain, we deploy another vCenter, or you could just deploy multiple clusters inside of a single workload domain. And then at the same time, we also have the choice here that we can't completely dictate here on the PowerPoint, but we have the ability to, when we deploy workload domain 2, we could share the current NSX manager or deploy its own. In this one, we completely decided to deploy its own. And this really is just based upon your business application needs, right? Here, we've deployed workload domain 3. And we'll set this one up with multiple clusters as well, but this one is actually going to share the NSX Manager controller infrastructure. So it's going to share some of the NSX components across workload domain 2 and 3. The management domain has its NSX management plane, and then workload domain 1 has its own NSX management plane. And so we've got this real nice flexibility depending upon your needs as a business, what works for you. Now you might think, why would I need multiple workload domains, right? So I just want to give you a couple ideas to think about here. Here we're actually deploying, which is best practice, giving Horizon its own workload domain all by itself. The churn rate on desktops being spun up and spun down is very busy on a vCenter. So you would want that to have its own vCenter and be able to control the churn rate and how busy that vCenter is away from your Windows business applications or your Linux business applications. At the same time, you can see we've created a workload domain here for Windows applications to run on. And you can actually give the Windows administrators their own vCenter and their own separate clusters and their own NSX manager controllers to actually manage their own infrastructure. And the same goes with Linux or the DevOps. So you can separate these things based upon the business needs and the architecture that meets your business needs. A lot of flexibility in how this can be deployed. So let's take a look at how this works, right? We watched a demo on getting it stood up in a greenfield environment. But now let's take a look at how do we scale this out? What does it look like when we scale this out based upon what we just saw in the PowerPoint presentation here? So we'll jump back over to the demo. And here we are again at that VMware Cloud Foundation SDDC Manager dashboard page. And we're going to take a look at the inventory and click on hosts here. And here you can see we've got these first 4 hosts that we talked about. And we can see those are all tied to that management domain, right? So now we want to scale this up, add some more hosts. So if we look at unassigned hosts, there aren't any available. So what do we need to do? We need to rack stack cable some more ESXi hosts. And then we're going to go through the process of commissioning the host. And commissioning the host means I'm just going to register this ESXi host that I'm going to add to the environment. I'm just going to register it with the SDDC manager. So we've got a checklist of things that need to be done. We need ESXi installed again, right? On these bare metal hosts, we need them rack stack cabled, make sure that everything's ready with DNS, DHCP, all the different settings. So as long as we have all those settings again, we're good to go. From there, we're going to add some additional hosts. So there's a couple methods for commissioning hosts here, and we can type in the individual ESXi host name. We're going to use this one and deploy it on vSAN. We're going to use the bring up network pool. And we need to know the username and password to register this host. And so you can type them in one at a time like this and go through the process of adding multiple hosts to your environment. We also have the ability to do a bulk import. So here we've got 2 of them added. And we'll go through and just commission these 2, right? We'll try this out. So we're going to confirm the fingerprint on these 2 hosts and validate that these are ready to go. We'll hit next and commission the hosts. These are the ones that we want to add. And so that just adds 2 hosts. So we've got the commissioning process complete here. We'll close that. Now we'll take a look at unassigned hosts. There we've got 2 hosts added. Let's add a couple more. Because some of our larger customers don't want to go through the process of keying all this in from one at a time. You might have hundreds or sometimes thousands of hosts available. So we're going to add using this import button. And this just points us to a JSON configuration file where we've got the fully qualified node domain name, the username, what type of storage we're going to use as we commission these, the password, and what network pool within the VMware Cloud Foundation do we want to attach this to. And so you can kind of see we've done this for a good handful of hosts within this environment. So we've got all these ready to go. And we're going to close this JSON configuration file and browse to it and open this up. And now we can import a whole bunch of hosts. I think we can do up to 100 at a time. And then we're going to bulk commission these. So we've got ESXi 7 through 12 here. We'll confirm that fingerprint again. And then we're going to validate them. And we'll click next. It's going to review those settings that were the hosts that we're going to commission. And then it goes through, again, through that automation process of registering these hosts and getting them attached to VMware Cloud Foundation. So now if we scroll down and we're on the unassigned host tab here, we can see we've got ESXi 5 through 12 all commissioned and registered to be used with VMware Cloud Foundation. So now we'll jump back to the VMware Cloud Foundation dashboard, and we'll go over to creating a workload domain. So we're going to use these ESXi hosts for a workload domain. So we talked about this in the PowerPoint, how we're going to take some ESXi hosts and actually deploy a brand new cluster and deploy vCenter with it and create this workload domain. So we'll go through this process. So here we are in that VMware vCenter. We've got those first 4 hosts, 1 cluster, and everything's ready to go. We've got host commissioned. So let's add these hosts to the environment. So we'll go through back to the Ask the DC Manager dashboard page. We'll click on workload domains, and we're going to deploy a virtual infrastructure workload domain. We're going to click on management here and take a look at those hosts again that we've already got deployed. And we'll go back to hosts, unassigned hosts, and we've got a good handful of unassigned hosts ready. Now, a couple things we need to pay attention to. When we deploy a workload domain, we need to make sure that we have the software components ready to actually deploy this. So one of those software components is we need NSXT downloaded and ready to go. On top of that, we need some license keys for our environment because we're going to add capacity. So we want to make sure we have keys available. So here we've got some that are unlimited, some that are ready, but we can see we've got a good handful of keys ready. So vCenter, vSAN, NSX, vSphere, all those different components. We've got license keys ready to deploy more infrastructure. And then from there, we'll jump over to workload domains and we'll click on add virtual infrastructure. From there, we're going to add this new workload domain, and we're going to deploy it using vSAN as our storage to bring this up, just to get it started with, right? We do have the ability to also start and create a workload domain using NFS or VMware fiber channel on VMware FS. So if you've got fiber channel storage, NFS storage, and when you want to attach that to VMware Cloud Foundation, you can as well. But this here is just the process for what storage are we going to use to create this cluster. And so for this one, we're going to use vSAN just to create the cluster. From there, we're going to give it a name, cluster name, and an organization name. And then we're going to key in, again, this is a new workload domain, so it's going to deploy a new vCenter, the fully qualified domain name, IP, password information. We're going to choose NSXV or T. For this one, we're going to deploy NSXT. What VLAN do we want that to be on? And then we need the names and IP addresses for all those different NSX components so that we can deploy them to meet your customer environment. All right, so now we've got all this keyed in, the administrator password for these different components. We'll hit next, and then we're going to deploy, like we said, vSAN. So we get to configure this one parameter here. How many failures do we want this vSAN environment to tolerate? We're going to use this for a production system, so we're going to choose 1. From there, we're going to scroll down and select a handful of ESXi hosts. So we'll take a look at ESXi 5, 6, 7, 8, and so we're going to choose these 4 hosts to deploy this workload domain. From there, we're going to select the NSXT license, the vSAN license, and the vSphere license. We'll hit next. We'll review the naming conventions that are being used within the environment. And then we're going to review all the different settings we've keyed in for IP addresses, vCenters, make sure everything's accurate, ready to go. And then if we're all set, we're going to hit finish. And this will automatically create that entire workload domain. Very, very similar to using public cloud infrastructure. I need more, I rack stack cable it, I add these hosts. And now this is just like going to a public cloud provider and being able to add hosts to your private cloud in a public cloud-like setting, right? So being able to actually commission more hosts and do it quickly and easily with automation. And so here are all the steps that it does to use the automation of the SDC manager when it commissions and creates this entire workload domain. So you can see how it connects to the ESXi host, creates all the different port groups and different settings for VLAN, and creates, the vMotion configuration, the NSX installation. All these different components are all deployed with automation. And here's the list. This is a very long list of all the steps that it goes through when it deploys it. It's all automated. So every time when you add more infrastructure to your environment, it's done with automation. And this is really the powerful point of VMware Cloud Foundation inside your environment. Being able to consistently deploy all this infrastructure over and over and over again as your business scales up and has more need. We can scale out your infrastructure quickly and easily. So now you can see on top of that management domain, we now have this workload domain that's deployed. And we'll jump out to look at the services. Here we've got the link to the vCenter and the NSXT cluster that we've deployed. Take a look at the host. Here we've got ESXi 5 through 8 like we selected, and that cluster that it deployed for this environment. And then we can jump over to the vCenter and take a look at this. And now we can see here's that management domain, those first 4 hosts. And here's this additional workload domain. And again, using the automation of VMware Cloud Foundation, we've deployed all this infrastructure with automation, providing consistent infrastructure and operations within the environment. So now we'll jump back to the SDC Manager dashboard page. And there we are. We can see we've got management domain deployed and 1 virtual infrastructure workload domain deployed. And again, we can go through this process and continue to scale out the infrastructure as needed within your environment. So let's jump back to the slides and talk a little bit more about some of the other capabilities of VMware Cloud Foundation. So like we talked about early on, depends upon what you need as a customer, right? So you can start out with this consolidated architecture and start out small and deploy those first 4 hosts and actually run your business applications on those if you need to. Outside of that, if you're a larger customer, or you can scale up from small into our standard design where we deploy that management domain, and then we also deploy additional workload domains for your business applications. And that's that standardized architecture that we talked about. And we have this set up so that you can start out small today and grow and scale your infrastructure quickly and easily within your environment. Now, let's take a look at another important fact that we talked about early on, the struggle with some customers when it comes to patching and upgrading and maintaining this consistency across all their infrastructure. So what we've deployed here is we've got the ESXi hosts, the vCenter, vSAN, NSX. We've got all these different software-defined data center components, right? And they all have different patches or upgrades that occur over time. And if you've ever walked through the process of going from vCenter 4 to vCenter 5 to vCenter 6, it can have a lot of interdependencies across all these different software components, making sure that everything's going to work as you go through the upgrade process and don't break anything. When it comes to VMware Cloud Foundation, you don't have to worry about any of that. We make patching and upgrading as easy as possible within your environment. We take care of all these dependencies and make sure that things get patched in the right order so you don't get yourself in trouble by patching things in the wrong order at any point in time. So at the same time, we give you the flexibility to also patch and upgrade on a per cluster basis. So you have granular control of for when things get patched or upgraded. We can actually even go into cluster level is in the user interface. We can use some command line stuff to say, exclude this one host from a cluster and actually patch on a per ESXi host basis. So we've got real nice granular level control of when things get patched within inside your environment, making it very, very easy. And so what'll happen is VMware will release an update bundle, and you'll get a notification within VMware Cloud Foundation in that SDC Manager dashboard page. And you'll be able to review and take a look at those updates, schedule them on a per cluster basis, and get those patches applied. And then you can monitor and report on those patches going forward within your environment, making it secure and safe within your environment, and also making this process as easy as possible so you can maintain this secure, consistent patched infrastructure within your environment. So let's talk a little bit more detail about some of the storage options that are available. I know this comes up as a question from a lot of our customers. So I showed you a little bit when we commissioned or added that additional workload domain, we had the ability to actually stand up and choose a different type of storage, right? So on the top here, when we deployed that management domain, those first 4 hosts, our only choice was to deploy that management domain on vSAN. And this was only used to simply create that management domain. Now, when you created it, that's fine. You want to add some more capacity to it using Fiber Channel or NFS, some of your existing storage infrastructure? Absolutely. You can connect your management domain or any of the additional workload domains to your IP or Fiber Channel network and connect to these different types of supplemental storage devices. So we can actually use vVols, iSCSI, NFS, Fiber Channel, all these different components can be added as additional storage. It's just we have a couple different types of storage that are needed to create that workload domain on that initial creation process. And then when it comes to deploying that additional workload domain, we actually give you a little more flexibility there. So when you create that workload domain, we give you the choice of using vSAN, NFS, or Fiber Channel. And again, this is only in that creation process. So when you initially deploy the workload domain, we need some sort of storage backing it. And you can choose these 3 different types for creating those additional workload domains. If you want to add more capacity after it's created, you can use any of these ones on the bottom that are different supplemental storage. Again, vVols, iSCSI, NFS, or Fiber Channels. And that gives you the ability and the flexibility to choose the storage that you need within your environment. If you've got existing storage infrastructure that you want to keep leveraging within your environment, we are absolutely able to attach to it. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of how things work, what VMware Cloud Foundation is, and just kind of gives you a nice high-level overview of what VMware Cloud Foundation is all about. We're providing this easy-to-use infrastructure within your data center to try and give you this public cloud-like experience, but it's for your private cloud. Again, this is not a public cloud thing. This is for your private cloud. This is in your data center, making it easy for you to deploy solid, consistent infrastructure and scale it out with ease as if it were a public cloud, but you're actually inside your data center. From there, we have many, many more tools and demos to show you on how much automation there is inside Cloud Foundation. And I don't even have time to show all of it. There's so much more. So a couple things I want to point out here is go take a look at some of the demo pages we have out here on the VMware Cloud Foundation Resource Center. So if you go out here to vmware.com/go/VCFRC, that stands for VMware Cloud Foundation Resource Center, it will take you to a page where you can see not only the demos I just showed you, but more additional demos. We have the ability to replace all the SSL certificates with automation in the entire environment. We have the ability to rotate or change those passwords for when one of your administrators leaves and goes to another company and you need to change the passwords on everything. We do it all from the user interface, making it very, very easy. We have lots of different capabilities. We have this poster available that kind of gives you a high-level view of all the different architecture components of how this gets deployed and what it looks like once it's deployed. Take a look at all these additional resources. If you've got any questions, again, reach out to me. And hopefully this gave you a good information on how to get started with VMware Cloud Foundation in your environment, making your environment very simple and easy to manage going forward. Whether you're a small business or a large business, does not matter. We're here to make things easier for you going forward. Hopefully this presentation has been helpful. If you've got any questions, hopefully you've been asking those along the way. I'm here in the live Q&A. I'll hang out for another couple minutes. If you've got questions, please reach out. I'll be happy to answer those questions. Thanks. Have a good day.